My name is Shalet and I'm from Southside Jamaica, Queens. And today I'm here to tell my story. Growing up, I was always a little seldom to talk about myself. Always wanted to know more about history, events, and can very easily tell you what's going on with everybody else. But as I'm growing older, I'm trying to go against the grain and practice storytelling as resistance. Today I'm here to tell a little bit of my story. In my family, people didn't just show up. They showed up with a story. Stories were an integral part of our gatherings and not just background noise or something happening on the side. Stories were the main event. The best storytellers was always greeted first with warm love and laughter, that feeling in the room that says, if they was talking, it was worth listening to. I still think about my cousin Bavon and how to this day we can't wait till he arrives. And even when he retells stories, it's like they get better with time. And as a child, I'm soaking all of this in, not just the words, but how the stories are actually being told. The way that voices changed, the way people leaned in, the way that timing mattered. And at that time, I was learning without realizing I was being taught. I think I was especially drawn to stories of back home, stories of Guyana. When they talk about Guyana, the room felt different, kind of slower, a little more intentional. I would close my eyes while they spoke and imagine it. What it would be like to grow up the way that they did. They seemed free. Stories picking mangoes straight from the tree, stories of going to the market, stories where everybody just knew each other, and not just by name, but by history. Last name mattered there. They talked about the people they loved there and the ones that they left behind. And even when the stories were joyful, there was always something underneath them. A sort of distance or a longing, a loss that didn't need to be explained. At the time, I thought sharing stories was just something my family did. Something cultural but small, something personal. I didn't realize that I was being introduced to something much bigger. Later on, I learned that storytelling is an African tradition, an ancestral practice, a method of survival. Before books was accessible and before our histories were considered even worthy of record, before our lives were documented with care, we told stories. When our histories were stolen, we carried them in our mouths. When our voices were erased, we passed them down anyway. Storytelling became a way to preserve memory in systems designed to make us forget. So for Black communities, storytelling has always been resistance. It says that you don't get to define us, and we will remember ourselves. Stories carry warnings, they carry lessons, they carry truth. They taught us how to move through the world, who to trust, who to watch for, and most importantly, how to survive. Nobody called it emotional intelligence or trauma processing, but that's exactly what it was. Storytelling allowed us to speak about pain without asking permission to name it. It allowed us to honor joy without pretending suffering didn't exist. And maybe that's why stories were sacred in my family. They weren't just entertainment, they were protection. And every time someone gathered us and said, come, let me give you a story, they were passing down more than just a memory. They were saying, this matters, we matter. In a world that has constantly tried to silence Black voices, storytelling became a refusal to disappear or be erased, a refusal to let our experiences die with us. So when Black communities tell stories, we're not just reminiscing, we're actually preserving lineage. We're honoring the people who came before us, and we're keeping ourselves intact. Storytelling says, we were here, we lived, we loved, and we survived. And whether we knew it or not, every time we gathered, every time we laughed, every time we told a story worth listening to, we were practicing resistance.